Hey guys, just a quick note before we begin that the show may contain spoilers and adult language, but that's just because we know how to have a good time. Stick around, you'll be glad you did.
You are here for me to enlighten you.
You ever act like this again, you're barred for life.
It's just violent bass.
It's kind of embarrassing.
If you know your lines, then you can forget them.
Oh, I get it. It's very clever.
Hello peoples and welcome to Esoterica Cinema, the podcast where we take films from the cinematic multiverse and discuss the hell out of them. My name is Jason Peters, and with me today is the man that both Willem Dafoe and John Hamm admitted to feeling anatomically inferior to, Mr. Ryan Seabold!
John Hamm sucks! John Hamm doesn't suck. I love that.
He just, you know what? He just can't compare to you where it counts. That's what he was saying, man.
I know that.
Yeah, no.
He knows. He definitely knows that. And all you ladies know that.
I'm sure the listeners already picked up on that. You've got like a strong BDE that you kind of bring to each episode, you know? Which, of course, for those that are listening, means bro down energy, actually, in case you didn't know.
That's the truth. That is the truth.
We have got a batshit banana pants crazy ass film this episode. Ryan, break it down for our listeners.
Jason, this might be, man, a hard one. This might be my favorite movie we've watched so far. I loved this movie, The Lighthouse from 2019. Giving you a quick synopsis here from iTunes. Two lighthouse keepers, played by Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, fight each other for survival and sanity on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s. From Robert Eggers, the visionary filmmaker behind horror masterpiece The Witch, which I did not care for. I think we talked about that last episode. Just a lot of thick, I don't know if they were Cockney accents. I think I called them at one point Pilgrim accents, which I don't know any other way to describe it. It was just a lot of the slang and this and that. And this movie kind of opened that way with some salty sea dog slang from old Willem Dafoe. And I was like, Jesus, here we go. And man, they kind of ditched it. And I'll tell you, it didn't bother me. The slang, it didn't matter what they said, really. As long as you get the gist and you're just along for the ride, this movie is a roller coaster. And added bonus, it answers the age-old question, how would you fuck a fish? And I could, you watch.
Honestly, Ryan, I'm not gonna lie. I actually knew the answer to that question. We don't have to go into the specifics, but
college was weird. Yeah, things get weird in college, and sometimes you got to try some stuff like fucking a fish. No, I mean, you watch some mermaid shit when you're a kid, and this lets you know, hey. This is how exactly.
You can only watch The Little Mermaid so many times as a youth without wanting to take it to the next step.
And they did. Robert Eggers said, I got you, fam. And showed us very explicitly what mermaid pussy looks like. Holy smokes.
Finally answering the age-old question.
The age-old question, yes. Yeah.
Before we get into it any further, let's go ahead and let's play a trailer from this crazy-ass movie, The Lighthouse.
Tell me, what's a timberman want with being a wickie?
Just looking to earn a living, just like any man. Starting new.
On the run. Keeping secrets, are you?
No, sir.
Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? Why don't you spill your beans? of this rock? 5 weeks? 2 days? Help me to recollect.
Another thing, Ryan, that's kind of interesting is I think this is probably the 4th A24 film we've done on this show already.
Really?
Out of a dozen or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like 90 to 95% of our films, everything but Fritz the Cat, has been either A24 or Criterion. And I am not complaining about that at all, believe me.
God bless them. Donate to A24, everybody.
Love what they're doing
Help these
right
fuckers
now.
out, because they're cranking out some gems for us. Love it.
Absolutely, which is not a pun on Uncut Gems, which they did.
Oh, Jesus. No, that was not a intentional pun.
So, Ryan, let's talk about The Lighthouse here. Let's start as we do at the beginning.
At the beginning.
Film opens up. We've got this black screen with these sort of ambient tones. Not really sure what's going on. All of a sudden, we get a cut to this big gray square. And it's really kind of obfuscated. We don't really see anything that's going on. It ends up being fog that slowly sort of dissipates to reveal an ocean with a boat that is headed toward our titular lighthouse. And right off the bat, there's a lot of stuff that indicates that we're going to be in for a different sort of ride. I mean, the first and obvious, most glaring thing is the aspect ratio, which at first
I did not know this was in 4x3.
I didn't either. And there's always, there's films that have utilized that aspect ratio before for certain scenes, like, in Kill Bill, for example, when she's in the coffin, a couple other things. Oftentimes it feels like it's kind of a gimmick of sorts. And I think one of many great things about this film is that it actually works to really emphasize the sort of claustrophobic nature of, these two guys that are basically going to be trapped in these very small space in this lighthouse for longer than they should. And also it sort of works to highlight the geometry of the film, if you will. So, a lighthouse being a tall, narrow structure, it's interesting because there's a lot of sort of tall, narrow photography. I thought it was interesting, as opposed to being sort of like a wide landscape. Everything's shot almost like vertically, and it wasn't anything that I've ever really considered before I watched it here, and it proved to be very effective.
Yeah, it's hip to be square in the old lighthouse.
And then, of course, there's the grainy black and white footage, too. And it's just, the film's supposed to take place in 1890, I believe it is. And all of these things sort of add up to lend itself to that atmosphere. We've got old style sort of cinematic tricks, old grainy black and white footage, old 4:3 aspect ratios. Of course, as you referenced, the accents, they harken back to an older time. And, so it was just really interesting to see how all these things added up to creating the atmosphere that it does.
So you bring up accents, and that was, if I noticed one thing that was kind of a little off in the film. Did you notice that Robert Pattinson's accent kind of changed a little bit throughout the film? I felt like we started a little British almost, and then there was some salty Sea Dog stuff, and then he was just regular Robert Pattinson for a minute, and then all of a sudden by the end he was from Southie. And I felt like I was watching Good Will Hunting. It was a little off-putting. I thought his accent was a little not consistent, but that was just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but.
Oh, no, it was not just you, sir. That was 100% accurate. I actually had that in my notes. I was going to save that for the end, but, you brought it up here in the front. Yeah, no, dude, his accent changes through the entire film in all of the ways that you just mentioned. And in one scene, he's trying to be, Daniel Plainview. And in the next scene, he's trying to be Travis Bickle. And then in the next scene, like you say, he's Robert Pattinson. So all over the place with that. And because the film does play with elements of madness, I suppose if you really wanted to, you could just chalk up what's probably some lesser acting to some madness, to some good old sea madness there.
Some descent into madness.
I'm so crazy. I'm talking in tongues. I don't even know what accent and language I'm talking anymore.
Oh, man.
Unlike Mr. Dafoe, who was remarkably consistent in his gruff sailor delivery, which was just amazing. I mean, he was so great in this film. It's just every time he opens his mouth, whether you could clearly understand him or not, it was just an amazing performance with tons of fire and ferocity and everything behind it. And but his accent was definitely consistent, whereas Roberts was not.
No, Dafoe, as always, was a tour de force in this movie. I loves me some Dafoe. I don't care what he's in. I loved him as fucking Green Goblin in Spider-Man. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Spider-Man!
Right, I don't care. Bring on some Dafoe. He's one of my absolute faves, and he was one of the reasons I was really stoked about watching this. Also, this was kind of the... Man, I hate using words like breakout because the guy's been acting forever, but this is one of the breakout roles that I noticed from Robert Pattinson. And now, of course, he's our new Batman, and he's getting a lot of commercial fare and not just hiding in the background. But before that, everybody knew this guy as, Captain Twilight, and he always catches shit for that. But then you watch a movie like this, and Jesus, like, I'm a newfound Pattinson fan for real.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I was actually talking to my wife about this, where he's kind of taken a similar trajectory as Daniel Radcliffe.
Okay.
Where he became this sort of breakout, like, teen star, and it was based on, a YA property that sort of took off. And I'm sure he made all the money, probably not Radcliffe money, but I'm sure he made all the money that one would need for the course of his life. And so, yeah, from there, like, he didn't have to worry about doing anything for the money. He could just sort of take roles that appealed to him. And I think that because he had that label ascribed to him at a younger age, he was probably, again, like Radcliffe, desperate to escape it. So, yeah, he's done Safdie films. He's done Eggers films. He's worked with some really interesting, artists and filmmakers. And I'm sure that a large part of that had to do with the reputation that he did get for being in what a lot of people feel like are shitty movies. I assume they are. I haven't seen them. You ever see the Twilight movies, dude?
No, never once. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. He was in Harry Potter, though, with our man Radcliffe. So, he's got that going on.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I always thought he looked like Lurch. I always called him a Lurch looking.
Little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems less so now that he's older, but when he was younger.
I think it's his forehead into his eyes.
Yeah. But yeah, especially when he was younger, he definitely had like a Frankenstein thing going on.
You rang. Yeah. So the one thing this movie did open with, before we skip too far ahead, that I really need to point out, and I noticed this right out the gate, and man, it just like compounded and stacked and slapped you in the face. The sound design in this film deserved every award you could throw at someone that makes sound design. Like, it opened with the foghorn, and that continued to be a sounding alarm and a cause for Pattinson's madness, sea madness and whatnot, and added to it until we get to the very end, which, oh boy, stick around, folks, because it is awesome. But yeah, the sea horn that it opens up with, as in that gray scene you're talking about with the fog, I had the pleasure of listening to this and watching it. I will say listen first because, man, I enjoy some good sound on some really good speakers, and holy shit, like, it just sounded so good. And the waves and the rain and all the texture and the mud, like, everything they did just sounded like shit. Like, it just sounded unpleasant, not enjoyable. And it really puts you in that mindset, like, fuck this place. I am never, ever going to even visit a lighthouse. Fuck lighthouses.
Yeah, no, it sounded horrible in the absolute best, like, most exquisite way. It was really wonderful. Funny thing, it took me a really long time to realize that sound was the foghorn. I kind of thought it was something that the filmmaker was doing. So, because it in a way, it's kind of reminiscent of like what Hans Zimmer does in the Chris Nolan Batman movies, where it's just kind of like those low swelling tones. And so I thought for a while that it was part of the score. But then very early on, there's that scene where, Robert Pattinson's like holding his hands to his ears and sort of like, grimacing in anguish as a result of this sound. And then I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, the filmmaker's having the actor respond to something that's in the score.
Yeah, well, he's like shoveling coal
setting
or something.
It up for, like gonna set up some sort of surreal, ethereal, time warp, wormhole bullshit, whatever it is, right? Like something like that. And then it wasn't until much later in the film that I realized, like, oh, that's the foghorn, and they're just sort of taking creative license with the way it would sound, because obviously in 1890 they didn't have they didn't have digitized anything. So, but yeah, so I thought that was great. And yeah, it was just, I mean, it's one of those things, like, it's just, it sounds great, right? Like, each time it comes on, it has the desired effect. It's intense, it's mood setting. It's one of those things where it's abrasive, but it's meant to be so, and it's used just enough without going overboard to be effective.
Dude, yeah. And this movie was shot to shit, too. Like, oh, man, was it, for being black and white and everything, like in 4:3, you think there'd be a lot of things that would limit. These are things that would handcuff a cinematographer in a technical aspect of, like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to shoot it in 4:3. We're going to do it in black and white. I don't know if these were creative decisions from Eggers or the DP suggested it, or collaboration of the two, but Jesus, dude, the lighting on Dafoe was haunting, dude. And sometimes it could have just been one light, but man, the way that it was used and the effectiveness and what they showed and what they didn't show. There were moments of nudity that were hidden by darkness and shadows. Mm-hmm. Everything was so specific. And so for these people to get their landing spots as talent and to know, I'm going to take it this far and this and that, and my dick's going to be covered up in shadow, so it's going to be okay. We're going to underexpose it. I mean, they just... I thought it was a wonderfully beautiful film for being so, I hate to say limited, but unique. I mean, you got to admit, like, 4:3 black and white has got to be a unique situation to be tossed into. And the DP, if you look him up, he hasn't really done a whole lot. He's done a lot of short films. Wow. He did shoot The Witch for Eggers. It's his boy. I know very little about this guy. I'm going to have to look him up. Guy named Yaron Blaschke. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. I do that to people. I'm sorry, everybody. But yeah, he's a stud. He's a young upstart. He's very young, or ish in the business, and I can't wait to see what he comes out with next. I'm gonna watch everything this guy makes. The Witch was also really beautiful in its own way. Very kind of bleak and monotone and muted in its effect, but the setting was great for that, and he did a great job. But this was like next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that's most impressive, and this kind of speaks to like a larger opinion that I have of film in general, which is that so often in films, especially the larger the film, you see this a lot more often, which is that filmmakers sort of seem hesitant or ambivalent about really exploring their environment, you know? And whether it's just because the focus is on the performances or what have you, rarely do you see a lot of times where a filmmaker will take full advantage of what the environment has to offer, you know? And so I think of all these, you know, superhero films, for example, and they make these giant, really ornate, elaborate sets. And oftentimes it's like we just speed past them, right? Like you'll get a little 3-second establishing shot of some beautiful environment, and then it's just a series of close-ups, and you're not really seeing the set design and everything else, except for maybe in, you know, some distorted bokeh on the side of the frame because everything's doing close-ups on like some $20 million actors, right? So it's really cool when you have these sort of younger filmmakers, and I'm sure a lot of it is the financial constraints that are put on filmmakers by having a lack of a significant budget like you have with these indie films. But he really wasn't afraid to just say, okay, let's film the hell out of everything we can here. Let's start getting creative. You know, no such thing as too many Dutch shots on this one. I think like half the film is shot in Dutch angles.
I know, but that's kind of weird.
I don't know if you got that, but there's a lot of, you know, sort of natural geography and architecture with a lot of the stones and the ocean and the hills and the lighthouse itself. You know, whether it's the spiral geometry of looking straight up or straight down within the structure itself. There's just so many examples of interesting visuals just on this tiny little island with a little shack and a lighthouse, right?
Right.
And for him to be able to consistently deliver impressive visuals throughout the entire 2 hours of this, and it feels claustrophobic, but never necessarily repetitive in terms of the way the visuals are presented. So
I was never bored once. I wasn't looking at my phone.
Correct.
Like, I was never distracted. I was engaged. I mean, a lot of that is chalked up to the performances of these guys. But, you know, there were times that you're seeing Robert Pattinson just do chores for like, I don't know, 5 minutes. And there's a whole montage of shit. He's cleaning and scraping. And, you know, I didn't care. I was in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, speaking of that too, how about the fact that the first, 10 to 15 minutes, there's no dialogue at all?
I know.
It's literally just sound effects and score.
Yep.
And it's not until they're finally at the table, and I believe it's Willem Dafoe's character, Thomas, that finally says a cheer when he's actually about to have his drink with dinner.
Yep.
Correct, yeah. And at the time when we start out, Winslow, the Robert Pattinson character, he doesn't drink. You know, he thinks drinking makes you stupid. He makes a comment as such. And this is, of course, going to change by the end of the film to a dramatic degree.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie is kind of like documents the descent of Gary Busey. You know, I just felt like I was the documentary.
Well, it's funny because I remember when you described our very first episode, the travails of Aguirre and Charlie Kaufman as slow descents into madness, and that phrase rattled around my head several times by the end of this film.
Absolutely. This also was a literal film representation of how I believe a little behind the scenes look of Jason and I making this podcast, by the way. So if you go watch this movie and you wonder what it's like to be, you know, hey, what's it like to make a podcast with Jason and Ryan? That's got to be fun, right? Hey, watch this movie. I'll show you.
Yeah. There's a lot of hallucination and near fist fights, and also a lot of farting.
A lot of, flatulence, masturbation, mermaid fucking. It's just... This podcast, folks.
It gets messy behind the scenes, folks.
Yep.
But we bleed for our art. We bleed for you guys. This
Absolutely.
is why we do it.
Yep. It's a bird pecking good time.
Yeah, so one of the funny things, so, you know, earlier on in the film, I do like the fact that they do present Thomas as like a legit gruff sailor, right? Like, so often people are like, oh, you know, that guy's a really salty dog of a sailor. And it's not necessarily, maybe he's a little rough around the edges. This dude is a goddamn sailor through and through, right? Like farting, pissing, cussing, hacking up gross shit at meals and spitting on the floor and telling people to go fuck themselves and do their bidding and blah, blah, blah. Like, this guy is a salty dog for sure. And we see a lot of this sort of initial imposing his strength on the Winslow character right up front when he basically tells him, like, you're going to do all the work. I'm going to man the lighthouse. You're going to call me sir. And, you know, if you don't, basically, I'm going to knock your teeth out. I actually do have a clip of that, Ryan, for everybody listening, of him dressing him down when he does a poor job of maybe scrubbing the floors, maybe not. Was never really 100% sure. I think he did. But let's go ahead and listen to that just to get a sense of the power play here.
You've been neglecting your duties, lad. Don't deny it. What do you call that?
Sir,
What?
I mopped and swept twice over,
You
sir.
lying dog.
I swept them.
Tis begrimed and bedaddled. Unwiped, unwashed, and disdained.
Get some kind of pert out of molesting me.
Come now.
I already says...
How dare ye contradict me, you dog?
Now look here. I ain't never intended to be no housewife nor slave in taking this job. And it ain't right. These lodgings is more ramshackle than any shanty boys camp I ever seen. The Queen of England's old fancy housekeeper couldn't even done no better than what I done. Because I tell you, I scrubbed this here place twice over.
And I say you did nothing of the sort. And I say you swab it again, and you swab it proper like this time, and you'll be swabbing it 10 times more after that. And if I tells you to pull up and apart every floorboard and clapboard of this here house and scour 'em down with your bare bleeding knuckles, you'll do it. And if I tells you to yank out every single nail from every moulding nail hole and suck off every speck of rust till all them nails sparkle like a sperm whale's pecker, and then carpenter the whole light station back together from scrap and then do it all over again, you'll do it! And by God and by golly, you'll do it, smiling lad, 'cause you like it. You like it 'cause I says you will. Contradict me again, and I'll dock your wages. You hear me, lad?
Aye, sir.
Now, swab, dog. Swab.
And this is largely going to be the dynamic that they possess throughout the first half of the film. By the end of the film, Winslow, I believe is his name, he's going to sort of get the upper hand, but at least for the first half of the film, Thomas is largely in charge. And one of the more interesting and sort of moments that gets you thinking that, okay, you know, we're about to go like way off into La La Land on some of this stuff is earlier on when we get so there's like this tracking shot. It goes up. By the way, Ryan, I forget from film school, is there another name for a tracking shot that goes vertically instead of horizontally? Or is it just called a vertical tracking shot?
No, I mean, I would call it boom, like you boom up, like where the camera's going to boom up. Oftentimes.
Boom up, boom down. Okay.
Yeah, right. You have tilt and pan. People will use.
But yeah, but that's more just like, yeah, like tilting
the camera
up.
stationary.
Yeah,
and
no.
You're moving the focal plane of the lens. But this is you're actually moving the camera up. You're gonna boom up. That's how I would say it anyway.
Okay.
If there's any film nerds out there that want to
Awesome.
call me on my bullshit, fire away. But that's a vernacular that I would use.
One of the things that I realized in watching this film is you don't really see a ton of boom shots, where it's just literally like a vertical tracking shot without, some sort of tilt or, because a lot of times you'll get that with like establishing shots or, exteriors, whatever, where, people, the filmmaker will kind of go up and back in a wide shot, kind of that sort of panoramic display. But rarely do you just get like, a vertical Kubrick shot. And that's what a lot of these were, right? They were just these like vertical Kubrick shots. So there's this awesome shot where it's going up the exterior of the lighthouse. Again, we've got the sides of our television lopped off. So we've got this sort of claustrophobic atmosphere that's as a result of the not only photography, but everything else that's going on. And then it goes up to that spinning light. And we get this great ethereal scene where the light's spinning around and Winslow's sort of looking up. He's wondering what's going on. And it's almost like a Ken Russell style sort of like trip scene where Willem Dafoe's character, Thomas, is like naked and like cheering with the bottle. There's a lot of sort of these like, like visual acid trip sort of hallucination scenes. Another one that happens right after that is where he is going out and he sees all the logs rolling in from sea, and then all of a sudden there's the mermaid that appears, and they're not fucking or anything yet, dude. It's just when she's sort of still coming on to him.
They're still dating, little.
They're still feeling each other out, doing the dance and making sure they want to take it to this next level.
Maybe
he's
a finger
he's a
in the
human,
gill.
she's a fish. Could it ever really work? We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't know. Where does it go? Well, we're going to show you.
Another thing that I really liked, Ryan, that happened shortly thereafter, and this would become a theme. Pretty much any time a seagull shows up, I was laughing my ass off, dude. There's just something about the seagulls posing this existential threat and constantly challenging him that I just found hysterical, and it was funny, and it worked until, of course, it became horrifying at the end. But so there's that like first scene with the seagull where there's the standoff. He's like trying to bring the rocks back into wherever it is, but the seagull's standing there in front of the door. And he just like caws at him, and he's like, "Hey, move away!" And he's like, the seagull doesn't, and he just keeps challenging him. And eventually he like finally gets him to move by chucking a rock at him. But I just like every time there was another scene shortly thereafter where the seagull was like rapping at the window to wake him up, and it ends up flying away right before he sees him. But I just loved everything about the seagulls constantly antagonizing Winslow's character. It was hilarious.
It was the last thing they needed, and but yeah, it was the seagulls made for the best antagonist, because otherwise there were no real protagonists or antagonists. There was no good guy or bad guy. It was just two men losing their shit, and the seagulls kind of were, though, the other character in the film. You're absolutely right. It was that and the hallucinations, and you never really know too. Like, what I loved about this film to this moment, I don't really know what was real and what wasn't. So
yeah.
Because they start to lose their shit by the end, and we'll get to this, but Dafoe even challenges Pattinson's sanity, and by the end when they're all fucked up, and you don't even know what's real. You're probably back in Canada, blah, 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 and so we're the seagulls were the one kind of dose of reality that kept coming back throughout the film as a little bit of a callback to reality almost, because you knew they were real, and by the end you knew they were real. So that was, I don't know.
Absolutely. The other thing is, Ryan, did you ever consider how much hard work would go into tending to a lighthouse?
Never. No.
I thought that so many times. Like, I think before that, now I've always thought like lighthouse life would be like chilling. It'd be like beach life, but in like, Maine or some, Northeast place like that. And, you'd just be in your slicker playing poker and pinochle or whatever. I never considered having to, haul these giant heavy ass vats of fuel and this and that up the staircase and scrubbing and keeping the water clean and pumping the water. Just everything about that seemed just like you're living your worst life.
Well, it reminded me several times throughout the film of those, shitty early 2000s motivational posters that were on every salesperson's wall, and it's like endurance, and it shows a big wave crashing against the lighthouse rock, and it's like perseverance, blah, blah, blah. It has like a little description below it. And I just pictured, some salty dog fucking smoking a pipe with one eyeball and scurvy, and he's like, fuck you. He's all pissed about these posters. You don't know what it's like. You don't know endurance, you pussy.
Oh my God, I forgot how fucking lame those were, dude. Everybody had those, man.
Yeah,
like, everybody.
You remember those? There was just like a tennis ball sitting on a tennis court. It was like,
there was that one where it was like a boat on like a small lagoon, and I don't even know what it was. It was like Serenity or some bullshit, but it was like the original like synergy acronym that just all business people had, along with the it was in their office along with stress balls, and then along with those 5-ball pendulum things where you pull to one side and then you let it drop and then it just goes back and forth.
And then these shit posters. Some jackwagon made a fuckload of money off those. I don't know if that was all. I wonder if that was all one company. If that was just like one guy that made all that fucking money.
I think it was the Sharper Image, actually.
What?
They
Are you
used to
serious?
have all that shit, man.
Okay.
No.
We got. All right, you got me. I'm gonna look that up.
It was a partnership between them and Brookstone.
I'm gonna look that up after this show and see what fucking fat cat's sitting on a private island right now, sipping a Mai Tai. Listen.
I wonder how many of our listeners right now are enjoying this show from the comfort of a genuine Brookstone massage chair. Do you remember those, dude?
I do.
You remember when you would go to the mall and you have to sit there and wait for the damn 15-year-old girl who wanted to take like 36 minutes in there and just sit there, and it didn't even vibrate. She was just using it as a chair, but you were really timid because you were a shy teenager and you didn't really want to ask her to move or anything, and so instead you just sat there and waited like a jackass. Do you remember that?
The whole kicker to those chairs were the slots that you put your feet in. Those were the coolest. They had like the little surround sound cushions for your ankles and your calves, and they like vibrated around your feet and stuff, and that was what always sold me. The fucking twist is that I could probably afford one of those chairs right now. Now you got me wanting. I got to go look to see if they still sell those shits. Or maybe they've gotten better. Maybe the technology's gotten better.
Yeah, listeners, if every episode from here on out has a slight buzzing underneath that's just noticeable from here on out, just know that Ryan bought that chair.
It's one of two things, everybody. And one of them's a chair.
Yeah, but you already do the other one. That's not going to surprise anybody.
It's a chair. That's it. Yeah, a chair from Brickstone. Yeah, with my Lighthouse endurance poster. Yeah, that's it.
Dude, by the way, the Sharper Image in out here in LA at the Glendale Galleria when I was younger had something that to this day, if I could find, I would probably waste way too much money and buy it, which was like a full-size, like life-size scale replica of one of the aliens from the movie Alien.
Holy
like,
shit, a Geiger?
It was like, yeah, dude, and it was like 5 or 6 feet tall, and it was like mostly like, I think it was like kind of like the blue and purple design. It wasn't a queen, it was like a regular one, but it was like standing with its arms out, and it had like the mouth open with like the little guy popping out, and that thing was there for years. Wow. And if I could have come up with some sort of like heist to steal it, I probably watched Home Alone 17 times trying to come up with different ways to sneak into the Glendale Galleria. And each time it failed. Every single projection and simulation didn't work. But damn it, if I could find that again, I would so just waste too much money and go homeless spending whatever I needed to on that thing.
Your door jam flamethrower didn't work to get you into the Glendale Galleria?
Suck it, bitches!
Man, I'll tell you what, getting back to the Lighthouse, Robert Eggers would tell you how to fuck that alien. That alien pussy would be exposed, and you'd have your dick in it.
He would have extensive conversations with the costume and makeup department about exactly where the vagina on the alien would
about
most
this
likely
queen
be placed.
alien. Let's talk about that. All these egg sacs, eh? How are they getting here?
And with some of Geezer's drawings, I wouldn't be surprised if he already has like straight alien porn, and we just never like unearthed it. Like his widow's like keeping it locked and hidden, but it's there. It's got to be there. I mean, it was already halfway there.
I'll see your face hugger, and I need a dick hugger. Give it to me. Like, I want to see it wrapped around my waist like a tight pair of undies, and it won't let go. You can't pry it off. I don't care if you're an android with milk in your neck. It ain't coming off. All right, so The Lighthouse, though. There's a movie we watched, everybody. I'm telling you, Jason and I, it's just two of us in a lighthouse recording this podcast, losing our goddamn minds.
One of the scenes that I really did like too, like there's a number of sort of like what the fuck moments in this movie for sure, but one of the, I don't know if it was one of the first ones, but one of the most effective ones earlier that I remember is when he is trying to go up into the actual, open the hatch and go where the actual light is. And like we get that like slime dripping from the grating, and then he just looks up and there's just this like tentacle thing that rolls past or whatever. Yep. And I was just like, wait. Now there's like some weird supernatural shit going on or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
I think, yeah. And so let me ask Ryan, do you think that any of that shit were real, or do you think it was all just him going batshit crazy?
I'm going to answer you in 3 words. I don't care. I was all in for it. I don't give a fuck, dude. I don't care if it was real. It was real to me. I was in my fucking theater shitting my pants, dude, when the fucking sound design. I'm telling you, it was scary. This movie, they made creepy ass old Willem Dafoe, and then the tentacle and all of that. And Jesus, by the end, I mean, the payoff was huge. So, I don't know, man. They really built up suspense, with the violins and the foghorn that was going off. And Defoe's character wouldn't let Pattinson up to go see the light. I guess that was a privilege that was reserved for the wiki. The wiki is the novelty term for the lighthouse keeper. I'm assuming because it's like a candle wick. That's what I took from it. I don't know about you, Jason.
That's what I guess too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a big candle, right? So you tend to light at the candle, you're a wiki. So I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's what I got from it. So yeah, he wouldn't let him up there. That was reserved. Pattinson was on a 4-week stay, or tutelage, more or less. He's embarked on the to be an apprentice, more, with, for lack of a better term, to go be a wiki. Mm-hmm. And so he's under Defoe's tutelage to stay out for 4 weeks on this rock in the middle of the water. That you have to take a boat to get to. That's the other thing, is lighthouses to me were always like on the coast or on the shore. for all the lighthouses that I've seen. And this fucker was out there, and that's how they get trapped.
Yeah, it's definitely on an island.
Yeah, they had to take a boat to get out there, and he, Pattinson ends up missing his boat back because of a storm, and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so he wasn't allowed to get up to the light. Why, we don't know until we see Defoe buck naked with a tentacle, slime and all that. We're like, oh yeah, he's probably, either A, losing his mind up there, or B, he's into some shit, or 3, there's a supernatural element to this film that we don't know about yet. The answer is D, all the above. So yeah, that is really when the movie took a turn for me as well. I agree. That's when I was like, and here we go. And the fucking, I felt like everything up to that tentacle was like us going up the roller coaster, and you hear the click, 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 and you're fucking, your heart's racing a little bit. You're looking around. Everything's getting a little smaller. Can't see mom no more. Fucking, you're seeing the top, and then you crest the top, and that tentacle was like, fuck, here we go, and release. And it was just bananas.
Yeah, well, and then it starts to affect, has the same effect on Robert Pattinson's character as well. So right off the bat, after that happens, there's that whole scene with the bird, and Willem Dafoe had explicitly told him like, hey, don't fuck with the birds, don't kill anything, it's bad luck to kill a seabird. And I think it's the morning after they got drunk or something like that, Winslow goes to get some water, and it comes out black, goes back to the water reservoir, dead seagull in there. And as he, looks up from that, there's another seagull up, and it attacks him. He ends up getting pissed off, punches it, grabs it, and then just mercilessly beats the crap out of it, man. I mean, he just wails this thing against the ground over and over and over until it's just a bloody pulp. And, you see the blood splatter all across the rocks. And he was definitely exercising some demons with that. And then we get that very interesting scene where, not even an interesting scene, it's a very interesting shot where the wind just vortexes and all of a sudden changes due north or whatever it is. And, of course, he calls him on it later. He's like, oh, no, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, yeah, no, the wind's changed the moment you killed that bird. Willem Dafoe's character blames him for this entire thing by killing that bird in that moment.
You've upset the gods. Yeah. Triton. Blah, blah, blah. Let me just stop right there, because as a current citizen of the great city, as a current citizen of the so-so city of Tampa, Florida, I have frequented the beach many of times in my life, and I just got such a sense of retribution watching that seagull get beaten to a pulp. I know, I love animals. I do.
Steal my sandwich, will you bastard?
Oh, dude. And they shit on everything, and they just fucking fly around you, and they caw. I felt Pattinson's pain dealing with that seagull, and he only had one. Dude, Clearwater Beach has like fucking thousands of them. And never have I been given the opportunity to grab a gull by the legs and just whip it. And I wouldn't do it. Listen, everybody listening, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't. But man, it felt good to watch. It felt really good to watch.
But you would want to. You would want to so bad.
Oh, I just love watching it. I loved watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course after that, that's when we get to some good old-fashioned mermaid fucking.
Oh, geez. This mermaid comes out. So there are brief periods after the tentacle where we also see Pattinson going to the rocks. And it's like very quick cuts of mermaids and crazy sounds and a head in a lobster trap with a hermit crab coming out of its eye. And there's like all this weird kind of symbolism and imagery. And you never really know, like, is he losing his shit? Am I losing my shit? Like, what's going on? And then, full-blown mermaid scene where they don't quick cut. They kind of show you, and she comes up, and she's on the rocks and this and that, and Pattinson gets to interact, and, oh, boy. It's... I don't know.
Getting some of that mermaid puss.
Yeah, but mermaid puss. I don't know if graphic is the word. I don't know what you call. It
was pretty graphic. I mean, it was graphic for something that is entirely a construct of the imagination. I think that's fair to say.
Okay. I mean, they show fish
not unlike hentai,
labia.
right?
Fish
Kind of like
scale
watching
mania.
like animated like octopus porn, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
get creative, but it's still dirty, but it's also not real.
Yeah.
It walks a line.
this is that line, starring Robert Pattinson.
One of the things I did find interesting about this film is that I generally speaking hate when filmmakers take what I call the Robert Altman approach to dialogue, where they have the actors talk over each other and just record it as a single file instead of grabbing them separate and overlaying them in post. And I actually think that it worked really, really well here, in addition to the fact that, again, Eggers has some of the dialogue completely obfuscated to where you can see them talking or yelling, but you can't hear it because it's in the middle of a storm. And I think that what he did really intelligently with this film is he used it sparingly, right? Because like when Chris Nolan does it with the original cut of Bane's dialogue before everyone made him change it, and he's just being stubborn, like, whatever, dude with the mask, you wouldn't understand him. It's like, okay, but I'm watching a fucking movie about a guy who wears a mask, and I want to understand his nefarious plot to take over the world, especially if you're gonna have some dense ass plot where I need this information to make fun of, or to make sense of it later. So a lot of times filmmakers can just be stubborn like that, but I thought that really worked well here, and they made sure not to communicate any important information during those moments.
Right.
Just to use it for, evocative sort of atmosphere.
Look, there were things in this movie that I missed because of the way it was said or how it was delivered or the noises that were over it or the foghorn that was going or whatever. But it didn't matter. As long as you get the gist of the film and just stick with it. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the film yet, just stick with it. It is such a payoff. The performances are great. And it's more about the experience to me, I think, than any one piece of dialogue. There's not really anything that changed. I mean, towards the end, there's some revelations, definitely, in the interactions between our two characters, specifically when they're drunk. But they make sure to really kind of hammer those points home and make them clear. And you see the reactions from both parties when you find out who Pattinson really is and what he's there for, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, to me, this movie is more about an experience than any one particular thing or scene or act or what have you. So just buckle up and go along for the ride, really. I will also say, do you think Nolan's getting his last laugh that we all have to talk through masks now, and that's just our world that we live in? That it's like, oh yeah, I thought that was funny, huh? With the Bane shit, yeah.
I bring my thing for you, the people.
Control, Jason.
So Ryan, I was really impressed by the performance that Willem Dafoe gave. I thought it was really effective. Does that come across?
That was great.
But no, I'm glad you touched on the performance because I'm kind of stunned that Willem Dafoe didn't really seem to get any sort of awards attention. This is just an iconic, intense performance. He brings it with every single speech, none more so than a scene that starts off kind of funny and quickly goes south, where Winslow insults Thomas's cooking, and Thomas gets like so incredibly offended and butthurt by it. He's like, no, say it's not true. Say it's not true. You like my cooking. I know you do. He's like, even what about the lobster? Come on, you gotta at least like the lobster. I know you do. And he's like, screw your cooking. And he's like, and so then he gets up and just delivers like the most intense monologuing speech. It's like something that Zeus would give in one of the Greek parables.
Is this the Triton monologue?
Yeah, it is, yeah. And it's where the camera pushes in and Dafoe doesn't blink the entire 2 minutes.
Good.
I got a clip of that I'm going to play for people, and we're going to listen to it right now and come back in a moment.
Yes.
What? 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 That's what I mean! That's the trouble with you. That's the trouble with you. With you! With you! No! No! I want a steak! I want a goddamn steak! If I had a steak, oh boy.
A rare, a bloody steak. If I had a steak, I would fuck it.
You don't like me cooking?
Oh, don't be such an old bitch!
You're drunk. You don't know what you're talking.
How can I possibly like the horse shit you fix us for supper?
You're drunk. You won't be saying that.
In kitchen shanty cooks. There was fried donuts 3
You're
times
drunk.
a day.
You're
Country
drunk.
hand bigger than
You're
your
drunk.
food. I'm drunk.
You're me.
Be drunk.
Damn ye.
Drunk since I first laid eyes on you.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Drunken in a Virginia fence.
I seen it. You're fond of me lobster. Say it. Say it. Say it.
I don't have to say nothing.
Damn ye! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Hark! Hark! Triton! Hark! Bellow! Bid our father, the Sea King, rise from the depths full foul in his fury. Black waves teeming with salt foam to smother this young mouth with pungent slime. To choke ye, engorging your organs till ye turn blue and bloated with bilge and brine and can scream no more. Only when he, crowned in cockle shells, with slithering tentacled tail and steaming beard, take up his fell befinned arm. His coral tine trident screeches banshee-like in the tempest and plunges right through your gullet, bursting ye, a bulging bladder no more, but a blasted bloody film now, a nothing for the harpies and the souls of dead sailors to pick and claw and feed upon, only to be lapped up and swallowed by the infinite waters of the dread emperor himself. Forgotten to any man, to any time, forgotten to any god or devil, forgotten even to the sea. For any stuff or part of Winslow, even any scantling of your soul, is Winslow no more, but is now itself the sea.
All right, have it your way. I like your cooking.
Jason, I'm memorizing this monologue, and I don't know where I'm going to use it, but I'm going to fuck someone up with it. Like, you drop some knowledge like that on somebody with that level of intensity. If you're committed, Jesus, if you're committed, you will win any argument ever. That's just the
Absolutely.
The deal
No,
breaker.
this should be the new generation's like Ezekiel 29:17, the path of the righteous, right? It's the one you drop on when you just want to shut down motherfuckers. Like,
Yep. Oh man, like yeah, anyone that you're in any kind of discussion with or debate with, you drop some Triton nonsense. Oh man, and we're in an election year. Let's fucking get it on with a Triton monologue at the debate, son. Let's fucking do that. Whoever you're debating, if you do a Triton monologue, the other person's just gonna back away and say, "Okay, bro, okay, fine, jeez,
you win.
Calm down. It's all right."
As you mentioned before, Ryan, there are some revelations that come at the end of the film that kind of change things around a little bit. The first is when Winslow actually ends up talking about the fact that he changed his name. So he reveals that his name is actually Thomas as well, and that he changed his name because he was working a job and basically his boss was involved in a logging accident, and rather than attempt to help him, he just basically let him die. This would explain some of the log-based hallucinations that we would see in some of the dream sequences earlier. And later on, we also realize as well that Thomas may not exactly be everything that he makes himself out to be. And when he finds the book, when Winslow finds the book and he understands that Thomas basically gave him a negative review that he basically suggested to the employers that they can his ass without paying him at all. And he becomes hugely offended. And then he basically is like, you know what? Screw you, dude. Like, everything I've put up with, all this bullshit, and you're gonna pull this on me. And he basically at that point now starts to use his strength because, I mean, dude, Pattinson's way more imposing physically than Dafoe, right? I mean, Dafoe's a gruff, salty dude, but if it comes down to it, I'm putting my money on Pattinson when it's a slugfest. So
Dude,
he finally realizes,
I don't know,
like,
man, I grew up around a bunch of like old dudes like that were like uncannily strong, like groundskeeper Willie, like when they rip their shirts off, they've got like 8-pack abs. These guys, you know, when they shake your hand, they're just like rocks, like the Rock Man from fucking Neverending Story or Labyrinth or whatever. Fucking, yeah. I think Willem Dafoe's that kind of dude, like calloused and just strong as fuck. He's been living out there for how long? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. By the way, the other thing that we didn't mention is at this point, so because the storm has actually ravaged the island and a lot of their rations, these dudes have switched from drinking straight alcohol to a combination of turpentine and honey. And so part of the whole reveal of what's going on and all of these, you know, is he going mad? Is this some supernatural stuff at play? You know, you stack the isolation and the nature of their relationship. On top of that, you have to stack the fact that they're drinking a hell of a lot of turpentine. And so I think these guys' brains are just whacked.
He kills the bird, upsets the gods. A nor'easter comes through, ravages their island, takes their, food and all their rations and everything, and wrecks everything. And it also ruins Robert Pattinson's chance of getting off the island. He was waiting. His 4 weeks were up. He said, "Fuck you." That's when they started drinking because he wouldn't drink the whole time, if you recall. And then he finally did a toast. He's like, "Dude, it's your fucking last day." You know, Dafoe was like, "Pony up." So they toast. And that's when he starts drinking, and then the storm hits, and then he keeps drinking and keeps drinking and keeps drinking until, like you said, then they're on to harder stuff. He starts drinking turpentine and honey, and then we go full Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it's bananas. I mean, to a point where we get naked Dafoe with tentacles and like a light coming out of his chest and slow motion.
Yeah, that was nuts, dude. That whole thing where Winslow basically goes up to the lighthouse, finds his own dead body outside of, you know, where the actual light emits from. And then, all of a sudden, there's naked-ass Willem Dafoe, you know, kind of doing like an Arnold Schwarzenegger T2 pose, cleverly disguising all the bits that should be disguised. And there's just light, bright white light emitting from his eyes and casting over Robert Pattinson's character. And it almost looked like it was like a painting or something, you know, just the way that people were posed and
beautiful.
The composition of the frame. It was really interesting.
If I had that freeze framed and then printed and put screen printed and put above my bed, do you think I would ever have sex again? Ever once?
No, I think we just hear a lot of buzzing underneath your audio.
Brookstone Sharper Image Chair. I'm all about it. Let's do this. Lighthouse poster on one side, Willem Dafoe naked above the bed. Yep. Oh, boy.
Well, and so like I said, Ryan, there's the scene where Winslow, a.k.a. Thomas, finally takes control of the situation and almost beats Willem Dafoe's character to death. And he's kind of having a hallucination of his own. You know, they're drinking a hell of a lot of turpentine. He looks down. He sees a mermaid. He wants to bang it. Then he looks down, and now it's Willem Dafoe, except for he's Neptune, the god of the sea. And then he wants to beat the shit out of him. And then he does until he basically begs him to stop beating him because he's going to die. And then right after that, after Winslow is lording over him physically, he comes out and he's attached to a leash, because he demanded that he bark as sort of like a submission play. And so now he's got him on a leash and he's making him bark and he's walking him out. We don't exactly know where. And he's walking him ultimately to an open grave. And the funny thing about that, Ryan, is if you actually notice at that point, the storm is done.
Yeah.
Like, at that point, like, the storm is finally over, which is what we're led to believe is what's preventing them from getting off the island. And so it's just kind of funny, you know, I'm sure that's intentional, that like by the time they're actually in a position where they could theoretically be saved, like they're way too far gone to ever be saved and rescued.
Yep. And I think they've sobered up at this point, right? Don't they? Isn't this when they wake up kind of hungover and they're like, "Oh, what the fuck? The place is a mess." Blah blah blah. It's around that time, or was that before that? It's all kind of bled together.
Well, that was right before that, and then that's when we get the revelation that Robert Pattinson read the book. And
that's right.
And he basically calls him like,
got it, because the book was floating in the water that busted through the window.
Correct.
Got it. That's right.
Yeah, because there was a torrential storm the night before. It busted through the window, and so there was a flood that they had, and it had kind of just bubbled up to the surface. And speaking of that, you know, end scene where he does at least ostensibly bury him alive, I do have a clip of that I'm going to go ahead and play for our listeners. We'll be right back.
Get up here. What? Good boy. Good boy. Now you get in there where you belong. You do as I say, dog. There's my good lad.
You wish to see what's in the lantern? Put in the elastic system.
Shut up, old dog. Polish your breastwork.
Oh, what protean forms swim up from men's minds and melt in hot Promethean plunder. Scorching eyes with divine shames and horror. And casting them down to Davy Jones. The others, still blind, yet in it, see all the divine graces and the fiddler's being sent where no man is suffered to want or toil, but is ancient, beautiful, and unchanging, as the shade who girdles round the globe. Things true. You'll be punished.
So real quick, Jason, right before we played the clip, you were giving us a breakdown, skimming over some things, and very quickly, you just roughly threw out there that Willem Dafoe turned into King Triton so casually, like it was nothing. And yet that was fucking maybe the culmination of the ape shit bananas stuff that was going on in this film. You had tentacles. Robert Pattinson was like fighting it off like fucking Prince Eric and Little Mermaid, you know, fighting Ursula and the whole bit. And then he's like keeps punching him in the face, and then he turns back into Willem Dafoe. The guy's got barnacles on his face and like a barnacle crown. I don't know, man. I thought that the listeners needed a little more attention on that part. They needed to know that was sick, and some production value went into that as well, because there was some animatronics or something that was, I mean, it looked pretty solid.
Yeah, no, it looked really great. I think for me, the reason that I kind of skipped past it is because, and you can, you know, disagree with this, and anybody listening can, but I think that at the end of the day, I don't think there's really anything supernatural going on. Maybe there's a couple things that you could fail to explain, like the sudden change of the wind that seemed to be real. But I think that like 99% of all this stuff we're seeing is just them succumbing to madness. Just some good old Ren and Stimpy space madness just set on the water in a lighthouse, you know? They're just going batshit banana pants crazy. And that's, you know, so all of this stuff, it's just hallucinations and manifestations of their madness. And, okay, well, so I'll tell you what, because, you know, we're pretty much at the end of the film here. So dovetailing from there, what did you think about the very end where, you know, he finally goes through, opens the hatch, you know, the sort of lens cabinet opens up seemingly of its own after it seemingly stops on its own. And then, you know, he does that thing where he throws his hand in there. What did you think about all that? Do you think that really happened, or do you think it's just all in his mind, or how do you explain that whole ending through the lens that you view it?
So, yeah, so he walks Defoe out to his own grave on the leash, throws him in the hole. He goes back. Defoe comes back. He takes a pickaxe or something and just fucking
brutally... Oh, no, that's a legit fire axe, bro. That's like a fireman's axe to the shoulder that he took.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so he takes...
Because then he turns around and he basically crushes it into Willem Dafoe's skull, which is how he dies, like very shortly thereafter.
Yep. And that takes us to where we're at now. Which is, you know, he's like finally free of Defoe once and for all, gets the keys, and then goes up to the lighthouse to go see what the fuss is about. And then we have our like 2001: A Space Odyssey moment where you just get out of it.
2001 so much.
Yeah. You get out of it what you get out of it. He opens the light, or the light opens itself. As he approaches it, the light opens and reveals itself. And we never really see what's inside per se. Other than light beams on his face, and we, you know, see a close up of Pattinson. And then does it just go right from there to him on the beach? Is that what happens?
No. So what happens, which by the way, first of all, my opinion is the reason they never show you what's inside is because it's just a fucking light, dude. Yeah. There's no crazy alien anything in there. It's just a light, and these two people have gone insane. And I think that informs
There's nothing to
literally
show.
Everything. Yeah, you know, and to show it, you just be like, oh shit, it's like it would take some of that mystery, but to me, again, like I don't really think there's much if any mystery behind it. But what happens is the thing opens kind of in an inviting way, and he walks to it, and then he puts his hand in there. And if you recall, he just starts screaming as what I imagine his hand is burning or something, right? And Eggers basically modulates his voice to where it sounds like this really like heavily digitized, like a computer gone insane sort of scream. And I don't know. I assume that was just a style decision because it did work. It was the equivalent of like the foghorn, right? I really don't think there's any sort of time travel. Like it takes place in the 1890s. We're 100 years from that technology existing, any sort of digital anything. So I think it's just a stylish decision, and it totally works. But I really, unlike say like a 2001, which I would say, yes, you know, the entire final scene in the bedroom is all visual metaphor. You know, whether or not we necessarily understand it, like Stanley Kubrick 100% understands it. And yes, you know, the monolith represents this, and, you know, the astronaut suit represents this, blah, 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 blah. Bed represents this. I think that this is just sort of, again, an instance of style over substance. Not to say that there's any lack of substance there. It's just something cool that he did. Because, look, not everything needs to be 100% motivated by, like, oh, well, I did this because... Like, sometimes it's just there's some cool shit, dude. Like, think about, like... You know, like some great scene from like Jurassic Park, right? Where it's just like I'm thinking actually of there's a scene where the Velociraptor is walking through all the computers, and it's got like the green code that's like over his body. You remember that scene, Ryan?
I don't.
Oh yeah, so there's like, just imagine like there's a Velociraptor walking through this computer screen. It's all the computer room. It's all dark, and there's just green bits of code that are projected on him. Like that's an awesome scene. If you stop to think about it.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. That does strike a bell now.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite shots from that movie, which is why I bring it up. And if you stop to think about it, this was pointed out to me at some point. There should be no reason for that to exist because computer monitors don't project code like that, right? It's not a projector, it's a monitor. But if you intellectualize that shot, it doesn't exist. And this actually, I remember hearing the same thing when John Huston was asked about Stagecoach. And he's like, hey, why didn't the guys just shoot the horses to begin with? And then the entire thing would stop. And his response was, because then I wouldn't have a movie. And so there's certain times where I think we just need to be like, you know what? That was cool. It doesn't have to be motivated. I dug it. So I think that was the case here. But yeah, right. And then he basically has his hand in there so long that it burns. You know, once it reaches that terminal point, he, you know, goes flying back and he ends up tripping and tumbling down the giant spiral staircase to the bottom. And it's from there that we get the final shot of his naked body sprawled outside, being pecked and shit on by a bunch of seagulls that ultimately would get the better of him.
Ripped apart by seagulls, missing an eye, guts strewn everywhere. The seagulls had the last laugh. And hey, look, if you're on the beach and the seagulls are coming, they aren't going to stop at French fries, everybody. This is what they're really after. They want your eyes. They want your guts. Kill those gulls.
Trying to get some of that meat.
Maybe, Jason, maybe it's a Pulp Fiction prequel, and that's the same. Whatever's in the lighthouse is in Marcellus Wallace's briefcase. I don't know. Just a thought. Just throwing it out there. We always wondered what was in the briefcase. That all we saw was a glow, and now we know it's the same shit that was in the lighthouse that drove him mad. So I think I'm on something.
I think so. I would love to know if, much like on the last episode in High and Low, if there was like some sort of fight, you know, that Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson had that Tarantino stole from to put in one of his movies, even though this would come 20 years later.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's actually a large part of his success that a lot of people don't realize, is that Tarantino is actually a time traveler. And one of the secrets that he utilizes is he actually will jump forward in time and steal stuff from scenes that haven't been created yet, put them in his own movies, and then be like, yeah, I made that. When really, he just jacked it from future someone else.
That's, I mean, if not that, what other explanation could there be?
Jason, stop ragging on him. I love him. He's my favorite filmmaker. I think that's why I feel comfortable making fun of him, is because I love him, so I can say these things. You can't.
Like I said, I
can make fun of my mom. You can't make fun of my mom, right?
Quentin Tarantino's your mom? That explains so much.
It's a complicated history that I'd rather not go into.
Jason, I thought this movie was, you know, like I said, the last half of this movie was like 50% 2001: A Space Odyssey. 50% Marcellus Wallace's briefcase. I'm sticking to it. I loved this film. When I sat down watching this film, based on what limited amount I knew about it from trailers and such, I expected the boat ride from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for 2 hours, and boy, did I get it. That's the best way I could describe it. I had a couple of friends reach out to me knowing I was watching this the other night, and they said, you know, how was it? And that's how I described it, and I stick with it. It's the boat ride from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder screaming frantically with all the lights on his face, but in black and white and 4:3 for 2 hours. Everybody should watch it.
100% agree with you, buddy. Well, hey, I'm actually going to ask you to go ahead and give us a little bit more description here with your 3 adjectives that describe The Lighthouse.
Absolutely. I got salty because I felt like I could almost taste the fucking air there. Like I can't explain enough or really beat or drive home how this movie really encapsulates your senses. Watch this on the biggest screen you can, on the loudest speakers you can, and just breathe it in. I got morose because it was, kind of a downer. I don't know. It was a sad existence. And I got raw because, raw in every sense of the word. Raw dog and a mermaid, raw guts on the rocks at the end, raw everything. This movie was stripped down and just, oh man, yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. How about you?
Yeah, no, dude, those are great descriptions. for me, so first one's probably going to seem a little obvious, but intense. I mean, this is just an intense film through and through, between the visuals, between the score. You know, there's a lot of yelling in this movie. Like, these two dudes are constantly yelling at each other for like 2 hours. So, you know, if that's something, it's a pretty abrasive film when you really take a step back. And
well, that's why I made the Willy Wonka reference. Because when Willy Wonka starts screaming, you know, about the and no one knows when they're rowing, and he gets all fucking intense. That was kind of the Triton monologue to me, but you know, in salty sea shanty sea dog talk, you know.
No, totally. Well, and so this will kind of apply to that as well. My second adjective is hallucinatory, and that's often how I describe that Willy Wonka scene. This movie was just. It was like a fever dream. You constantly were questioning what was real, what wasn't. You've got some elements that are grounded in reality, and then you've just got some batshit crazy from outer space stuff coming in. And some of it's a dream, and some of it's not, and some of it's madness, and some of it's not. And so you're constantly just sort of left to second guess what's real and what's not. And my third adjective is fascinating. And I don't mean fascinating in this like, oh my goodness, so fascinating, some pretentious way. Like, I was literally fascinated by so many aspects of this film to the point that I would sit there and stop and really consider them. You know, that's when I say fascinating. It's like, oh, like I'm considering something, or I'm seeing something, or I'm hearing something. I'm looking at something in a unique way that I haven't really before. And
mermaid labia, bro.
Between the mermaid labia, but also between the shots and so this film actually helped me realize something about like my own tastes in film and art, but especially in film, which is that like I really enjoy when films are able to take strong traditional genre elements, but then combine them with a sort of like high-minded, sophisticated artistry, almost to the point of pretense. But anytime you can take really solid art, whether it's batshit crazy because you're Joe Dante and you're doing some, you know, live-action cartoon like Evil Dead 2, right? But then, you know, you can also be Tim Burton and you can have some weird, surreal shit that you're throwing in there. But you're also combining elements of like comedy with these things, right? So anytime you're able to take, you know, sort of like artistry and genre tropes and blend them together, whether it's comedically, dramatically, whatever, that works for me, dude. And so I think that's what this film did really well is, like I said, it was basically like, hey, I'm going to make this batshit crazy genre film about, you know, two dudes on an island going crazy, but it's going to be presented and filmed like an art project. And I just can't get enough of it.
No, I mean, yeah, I would watch this again in a second. I can't stress enough how this encapsulates all your senses somehow. If you turn up the speaks and you really dive in and you listen to it, I was surrounded by this movie like a warm blanket, like Nana's blanket. This is good stuff, man. Good stuff.
All right, dude. So let's go ahead and slap a formal rating on it. What you got for your grade, buddy?
Dude, I have to give this an A+, man. This was a fucking solid film.
Ryan giving his first A+ of the entire program.
Well,
wow.
Am I wrong? Where's the lie, as the kids say?
Well, I'll tell you what, Ryan. I'm going to give this one 5 stars out of 5.
What? Whoa! Star Search. Not even a quarter star off. This guy gives some full boat stars today. I love it.
Yep. 5 stars, A+ rating for The Lighthouse, which I feel like says, you know, just as much about us as it does about the movie itself.
That's fair. I mean, I've had at least a half bottle of turpentine and honey before I did this podcast. I think that's evident in the recording. I stand by it. Tentacles abound. I'm going to fuck a mermaid. Jason, thanks for having me today. I learned a lot from this movie.
Everybody, thanks for listening today. I do want to remind you that we love to hear from you. You know, we sit here and we jibber jabber for hours at a time about these films and about our stupid little jokes, but we also want to hear from you. We're tired of listening to ourselves, so reach out to us. Let us know what you think about our program. Let us know what you think about the movies we watch. If you think my opinion or Ryan opinions are way off base, let us know that. If you happen to be at a cafe eating a great muffin, you just want to reach out and tell somebody, you can let us know. Any reason that you have out there, we want to hear from you. And who knows, maybe we'll give you a little shout out on the show. Ask your question here. Anything could happen. You can reach us on Twitter at Esoterica Cinema. And if 280 characters doesn't do it for you, you can go ahead and send us an email to esotericacinema@gmail.com. Make sure you join us in 2 weeks where we are going to have a full episode and we are going to be looking at the film's hero and Sweet Sweetback's badass song. Ryan, I will see you then. Everybody, thanks for listening.
Are you looking for the hottest and wettest entertainment in New England? Then come visit us at Flippers for all your guiltiest pleasures. We have the hottest, cold-blooded girls that love to go down deep and make you rise to the occasion. Open from dusk to dawn and serving an award-winning all-you-can-eat buffet, including fresh lobster dripping with melted butter. At Flippers, you'll be swimming in all of your wildest fantasies come to life. Nightly 2-for-1 specials on all of our paint-thinning cocktails. We know you've been working hard. Need to relax? We've got you covered because we won't be. Come and see what everyone is talking about at Flippers, the Cape's newest gentleman's club.
Hark! Hark! If it please our father the Sea King, come forth, ye barnacle-crowned beast, from below these darkened depths. Rise up and show all who dare to look upon your buxom-breasted harpies what pleasures of the deep he hath wrought. Teeming with hypnotizing eyes and a siren song beckoning all those young and old, past and present, to gather round and loose their pockets onto the grimy platform bestow. Hark! Feast ye gullets and let ye melted drippings run to and fro through beards made gray from years of toils and scrubbings. Drown yourself in mermaid organs glistening in sea foam and be choked. Choked till ye turn red and blue with the pleasures only the sea can provide, till ye explode, and any remnants of who you were moments ago are now lost in the milky memory of the plagues below. Stabbing that moistened abalone, not knowing where she been or where she be going, but all that she be here now with ye, and me in the corner watchings with all the desperate rage of the sea in me virgin eyes. Make haste now with your mop, boy, as ye clean up the sad tears of fantasy spent. Come now, lest ye be left out in the storms a-brewing from Titan's rage.
On Highway 42 at the corner of McMaster's and Holland Avenue, opens nightly at 6 p.m.
From the visionary minds at Aberrant Literature comes a short fiction collection unlike any other, Aberrant Tales, bursting at the seams with stories of creativity, excitement, and wonder. Aberrant Tales takes the very best in modern science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and weaves them into one thrilling, eclectic package. Featuring the works of Ashton Macaulay, M.T. Roberts, Daniel Kurland, and Jason Peters. Aberrant Tales is available today in ebook, hardcover, and paperback versions, online and everywhere books are sold. Published by Aberrant Literature.